Welcome to Earth, where some countries have more money than morals. In this world, the gap between the rich and the poor is not just a statistic, it's a stark reality that you can see in every corner of the globe. From the towering skyscrapers that symbolize wealth and power to the sprawling slums that represent struggle and survival, the contrast is glaring. We're talking about corruption, folks. A global epidemic hitting poor countries the hardest. Corruption isn't just a word, it's a plague that eats away at the very fabric of society. It manifests in various forms, from bribery and embezzlement to nepotism and fraud. And while it exists everywhere, its impact is most devastating in developing nations where resources are already scarce. Picture a system where those in power treat public funds like their personal piggy bank. Not cool, right? Imagine the funds meant for building schools, hospitals, and roads being siphoned off into private accounts. The result? Crumbling infrastructure, inadequate healthcare, and a lack of educational opportunities. It's a vicious cycle that keeps the poor, and the rich, richer. This isn't just a few bad apples. It's a systemic problem rooted in poverty, weak governance, and historical baggage. Corruption thrives in environments where accountability is low, and transparency is almost non-existent. It's a legacy issue often passed down through generations, making it incredibly hard to eradicate. We're diving deep into the why, the how, and the oh hell no of corruption in developing nations. We'll explore the root causes, the mechanisms that allow it to flourish, and the devastating consequences it has on everyday lives. From the corridors of power to the streets where the common man struggles, corruption leaves no stone unturned. Buckle up, because it's about to get real. We're not just scratching the surface. We're going to uncover the ugly truths and the hidden stories that often go untold. So get ready for a journey that will open your eyes and hopefully inspire change. This is the Sticky Fingers Club, and it's time to expose the rot. Let's be clear, corruption isn't just about slipping a 20 under the table. Think bigger, folks. We're talking bribery, extortion, fraud, cronyism, you name it. Basically, any abuse of power for private gain falls under this umbrella. Imagine a politician accepting kickbacks to award contracts to unqualified buddies, or a police officer demanding bribes to look the other way. This stuff erodes trust, cripples economies, and keeps poor countries stuck in a vicious cycle of poverty. Poverty and corruption are like those toxic couples you see on reality TV. They bring out the worst in each other. When people are desperate for basic needs, they're more likely to engage in or tolerate corrupt practices. The struggle to put food on the table, to find shelter, and to secure basic healthcare can push individuals to the brink. Imagine a government official earning a pittance while surrounded by people struggling to survive. The pressure to provide for their own family can be immense. The temptation to supplement their income through shady dealings can be overwhelming. It's not just about greed, it's about survival in a system that seems rigged against them. This creates a breeding ground for petty corruption, which further weakens the economy and perpetuates poverty. Small bribes and under-the-table deals become the norm, eroding trust in public institutions. It's a vicious cycle, folks. The more corruption there is, the more resources are siphoned away from those who need them most. This leads to even deeper poverty, which in turn fuels more corruption. Breaking this cycle requires systemic change, transparency, and accountability at all levels of society. But there is hope. Grassroots movements and community initiatives are stepping up to challenge the status quo. By fostering a culture of integrity and mutual support, we can begin to dismantle the structures that perpetuate this cycle. Education and empowerment are key. When people are informed and engaged, they are less likely to fall prey to corrupt practices. Investing in education, healthcare, and sustainable development can create a foundation for a more equitable society. Together, we can break the vicious cycle of poverty and corruption. It won't be easy, but with collective effort and determination, a brighter future is within reach. Imagine a country where laws are more like guidelines and accountability is non-existent. That's weak governance, my friends, and it's a hotbed for corruption. When institutions are fragile and checks and balances are non-existent, those in power can act with impunity. They can steal from public coffers, rig elections, and silence dissent without consequence. This lack of accountability creates a breeding ground for corruption to flourish. Section 5. The accountability vacuum. Who's watching the watchmen? Remember that old saying, who watches the watchman? Well, in corrupt countries, it's more like, who cares? When there's no one holding the powerful accountable, they can get away with anything. Independent media, muzzled, anti-corruption agencies, underfunded or non-existent, citizens trying to speak out, silenced or intimidated. This lack of oversight creates a free-for-all for corrupt officials to line their pockets with impunity. Section 6. Social acceptance. It's how we do things here. In some cultures, corruption isn't just accepted, it's expected. It's woven into the fabric of society, passed down through generations like a family heirloom nobody wants. This everybody does it mentality normalizes corruption, making it harder to fight. People turn a blind eye, justifying it as a necessary evil to navigate the system. This acceptance allows corruption to thrive, perpetuating the cycle of poverty and inequality. Section 7. The legacy of colonialism, a history of exploitation. Let's not forget the historical context here. Many developing countries were once colonies, their resources plundered by imperial powers. This legacy of exploitation left them with weak institutions and a culture of extraction. Colonial powers often installed puppet regimes, propping up corrupt leaders who served their interests. This history of exploitation created a system where corruption flourished, and its effects continue to be felt today. Section 8. Case studies. Corruption in the wild. Let's put some faces to the names, shall we? Remember Ferdinand Marcos of the Philippines? He looted billions from his own people, leaving his nation in shambles. Or how about Sani Abacha of Nigeria? His corruption was so brazen, they're still recovering stolen funds. These are just a couple of examples of how corruption can devastate entire nations. It's a global issue, folks, and it demands our attention. Section 9. Breaking the cycle, education, transparency, and empowerment. In this section, we delve into the transformative power of these three pillars and how they can collectively dismantle the entrenched systems of corruption. All right, enough doom and gloom. It's time to focus on solutions and the positive changes we can bring about. How do we tackle this beast? How do we break the cycle of corruption and build a brighter future for everyone? It takes a multi-pronged approach, starting with education. Education is the foundation upon which we can build a more just and equitable society. By educating our youth, we equip them with the knowledge and tools they need to recognize and resist corruption. Imagine classrooms where students are not just learning about math and science, but also about ethics, integrity, and the importance of transparency. This kind of education fosters critical thinking and empowers students to question and challenge corrupt practices. We need to teach future generations about the corrosive effects of corruption and empower them to demand better. This means incorporating anti-corruption education into school curriculums and encouraging open discussions about the impact of corruption on society. Next up, transparency. Shine a light on shady dealings, folks. Transparency is about making information accessible and ensuring that government actions are open to scrutiny. When we can see what is happening behind closed doors, we can hold those in power accountable. Independent media, access to information, and strong anti-corruption agencies are crucial. Journalists play a vital role in uncovering corruption and informing the public. Access to information laws ensure that citizens can obtain the data they need to make informed decisions. Lastly, we need to empower citizens to hold their leaders accountable. This means creating platforms for civic engagement, where people can voice their concerns and participate in decision-making processes. It also means protecting the rights of activists and whistleblowers who expose corruption. That means giving them a voice, protecting their rights, and ensuring they have a stake in their country's future. When citizens feel empowered, they are more likely to take action against corruption and work towards a more transparent and just society. Together, through education, transparency, and empowerment, we can break the cycle of corruption and build a better world for future generations. Section 10. The high cost of corruption. Everyone pays the price. Think corruption only affects poor countries. Think again. It destabilizes regions, fuels terrorism, and hinders global development. It's a transnational problem that requires a global response. When corrupt officials steal from their people, it's not just their country that suffers. It undermines global security, hampers economic growth, and exacerbates inequality. We all pay the price for corruption, folks, whether we realize it or not. Section 11. Conclusion: a global fight for fairness. Corruption isn't inevitable, it's a choice. We can choose to tolerate it or fight against it. It's time to demand accountability, transparency, and a level playing field for all. Remember, folks, this isn't just about poor countries. It's about building a more just and equitable world for everyone. The fight against corruption is a fight for a better future, and it's a fight we can win together.